My blissful gorgeous selves, many people who live in England have very little knowledge of the history of their own country. The most of its 10 million yearly visitors gain only superficial impression as they come across the places. They visit its magnificent sea beaches, Stonehenges, and British Museum and National Gallery and Oxford Street, Westminster Abbey and Tower of London and theatre shows of Madame Toussaint. These are all wonderful places, but you gain only a limited knowledge of spatial character of England. There is so much more depths and feelings of this country. So, telling you just short because I lived in England, only in London, only just for 1 month, okay? So, its capital city is called London. Originally, it used to be famous as historical Londonium. Londonium. Okay, Londinium, Londonium. Now, whatever we know of London is from the 1st century AD, when Romans rebuilt it, starting from the banks of Thames River, from what is now known as the square mile area. It is finest sector of not only London, England, or Europe, but the whole world. After the destruction, it was rebuilt from Southwark, which is now the center of fairs, pleasure buildings, inns, monasteries, and hospitals. Third time, it was reconstructed from the area where now Buckingham Palace stands, built in 703 AD. The city was devastated 50 times, says the history records. Last main destruction was the Great Fire of 1666, which burned 4 days and 4 nights. The Blitz continues bombing from September 1940 to May 1941, when 1,55,000 families lost their homes. It has made English people more resilient and fast builders. Now between M25 and Greenbelt area, 15 million life forms breathe. Each area of London, different culture and customs survive. They are dramatically different from one another. Another area which might be 2 miles away. What is the same with London is the same with the whole of England. Why? Because the entire Great Britain was forced to accept Christianity only in 597 AD, that's why. Before that, the British people believed in no religion but a lifestyle with no compulsive scripture, with no binding mode of worship, and no binding kind of prayer, with no binding mode of any of the territorial limit. English people believed in a universal way of life. Very proud and confident as they still are, is leftover spirit of their glorious past. It did not recognize any distinction of color, creed, and facial look between man and man. Between man and human, they regarded all humanity as one family and the entire earth as a common home of all life. Their religion, if it was so called, their religion was a free thinkers club where everyone was free to have his or her own spiritual thinking and practice. Multimillionaire, precious great cultural heritage of Britain lies buried deep under 1400 years of superimposed coatings of misconceptions. These coatings have kept the Britons blissfully unaware of the great disaster that they were victims of spiritual fraud to drop their original stand on universal lifestyle. My dear friends, my evidences I can tell you is according to Encyclopedia Britannica, most ancient churches and cathedrals of Great Britain and Europe are astronomically oriented. Okay? Christianity does not acknowledge astronomy or astrology as wisdom. Vice versa, they consider them as satanic. Yes, devilish. Then why these early churches, whose construction times almost goes up to the time of around 2500 BC, are so beautifully built, that means even before the birth of Jesus Christ, what to speak of accepting astronomy and similar kinds of knowledge were shunned, prohibited and condemned as pagan practices. Then how their sacred churches and royal palaces could be built astronomically oriented? Tell me how. It only means they were built by a former culture which had vast knowledge of not only astronomy but strong, elegant constructions, vastu, and other hundreds of skills, and make life more enjoyable and glorious in 312 AD onwards, when Emperor Constantine of Rome, King Clovis of France, and Charlemagne of Central Europe began forcibly converting people. They also broke or converted their places of meditations and conscious evolution into these churches and cathedrals, which are still before us, in front of our eyes. Okay? 300 years later, another crop of Islamic tyrants compelled people to declare themselves Muslims through terror and torture and tyranny and trickery and treachery and taxation and temptation. Most of the Europeans in these churches were turned into Muslims and mosques. When Christians rose to power, when Christians rose to power and fought back again, they drove Muslims away up to far land called Turkey. Then they reshaped these mosques into churches again as before. But even before they became churches, they were still places of cosmic evolutions and meditations with fantastic wisdom, which is still to be discovered by brave English people and all Europeans. Is it the same wisdom we are sharing as intergalactic culture? And discourses in London and Trafalgar Square. Under the Roman rule, London was known as Londonium. It is supposed to be a corrupt form of its original name given by its founder, who belonged to another very high culture, possibly belonging to an intergalactic kind of culture. In pre-Roman era, it was known as Nandonium. Okay. It is a pre-Latin word which stands for astoundingly beautiful pleasure garden in the astral or celestial world, exactly as that city called El Dorado. Okay. Godfrey Huggins' book, The Celtic Druids, leads valuable evidence indicating British Iceland had a worldwide civilization and rule long before the Roman conquest. It was published in 1829 AD and available to see in British Museum Library of London. Lille Borst, a well-known US professor, writes in his wonderful book, Megalithic Software, that Westminster Abbey and St. Paul's Church in London occupy the sites of ancient sun god and moon god temples. Encyclopedia Britannica tells us well-known Stonehenge has been carbon dated to be 4,000 years old. It has astronomical markings to chart the rising and setting of the sun and the moon. The divine symbol inside the temple or the deity was so consecrated as to be illumined by the rising sun's rays on the longest day. It used to be taken in a procession to the Avon River 3 miles away. Those days British people were known to be shaping their life day after day on astronomical considerations. At the break of dawn on June 22nd, the longest day of the year, the Druids gather at the Stonehenge and facing the east, they invoke the rising sun to energize our intelligence is worded in pre-Latin language in Gayatri Mantra Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Exactly as still many people do in India, especially the Shanti Kunj people, the devotees of Gayatri Mata in Haridwar and Mathura also. Exactly as still many people do in India, Incas do in Mount Ades and Peru. Egyptians do, Aztecs do in United States of America, okay? They used to do when they were empires, when they were civilization. Mayans do in Mexico and sun worshippers do in Bali and everywhere else. Pre-Roman temples lie throughout Great Britain in unrecognizable ruins. European scholars are being prevented by Christian fanaticism from publicizing them. Hill of Tara in Ireland is now in ruins, but it used to be the ancient sacred site on which kings used to be crowned for centuries. Tara is a form of Divine Mother. Her historic temple is in Tarapet, Bengal. Okay, I visited several times. Heavily crowded with visitors all day, whole year. There is sacred love-making mystery schools where only alchemical approach to the ultimate is demonstrated and shared. Even I was stopped at the gate and they said, you will be allowed if you have a girlfriend, which I did not have, so I could not go inside. A 5,000-year-old ancient temple of human evolution was discovered late in 1997 in Stanton Drew Village near Somerset. Okay. Any name of township ending with shire testifies its population around a temple of human evolution. Swami colored stone of scorn is such a holy stone of royal British antiquity which forms part of the throne on which every British sovereign is crowned. Gorge or George is mere pronunciation of pre-Roman wise man named Gurg, who probably lived in British Iceland for a while. His books and stories are found related with the start of many other cultures in many parts of the globe. Yes, one Gargacharya was the Purohit, means the royal priest of Yadava family in Mathura city, who they moved to Dwarka later on. Okay, so understanding the culture of ancient England with which it ruled the entire globe more successfully and gracefully, far more humanly than it did in 1800s and in Victorian era by the middle of the 1900s AD. Its latest global rule was the most notorious one in the view of many scholars and politicians, because during this rule England was not its own. English people were far away from their original heroic dignified faces. They were converted to low-class Romans and their false beliefs, such as ladies have no soul, and animals are made by God for men to eat. This kind of foolish idea was forced on the Britons after 597 AD with terror and torture and tyranny and trickery and treachery and taxation and temptations. They were not them, but a completely hypnotized race with no knowledge of own ancestral heritage. Therefore, regeneration, re-acceptance of its former value system, former elegance and nobleness is very important, with which its global rule was highly admired, and all countries accepted it with complete loyal spirit. Never ever there was a rebel or voice for freedom. Culture consists of literature, painting, theatre and opera, including ideals of thinking, speaking and interacting. This also means systems of attitudes and values and feelings which are learned in the family, inherited or passed down from generation to generation. At present in 2003, Londoners or Britons have no overall culture, because large cross-section of people have been settled up there. Because of trendy areas which frequently change up by pop star or film star activities, now English people are more sensitive and receptive to others more than their former generation. They are trying hard to understand that, not to judge others on their appearance and dress code and views. Secondly, everyone has a right to his belief and attitudes. Thirdly, find a common ground for discussions. And fourth, spending time getting information on different religious culture and civilization. And next, they now are not being aggressive, biased and unsympathetic as former generations, although they are just assertive. This is good. They are now willing to ask questions and listen to the answers and views. They keep away from aggressive groups, blind to other opinions, okay? Such as crusaders and jihadis and terrorists and ant